Welcome to Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host J.R. Stewart,
And good evening, everyone. I'm your co-host Tommy Duncan. Welcome.
and we want to give a big shout out to Liquid for providing our theme music. And if you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Not necessarily in that order, but make sure you get all three done. Um, so, Tom, what is the tonight is open mic night, so we can go actually anywhere.
Hmm.
Anything that's on your mind, anything that's on my mind, and of course, for our listening audience, if you guys have anything that you want to discuss, you can post it in the chat line, which is open, or you can give us a call at 972-497-2280 and tell us what's on your mind. So,
Absolutely.
so what say you, Tommy? Anything on your mind that you like to discuss or get off your
Well,
chest? You got
you
any
know, there's
grievances?
no grievances in particular, man. Everything is all good. Of course, today is the very last day of March and the very last day of Women's History Month, and we have Easter ahead of us this weekend.
We have Easter with the bunny and the chocolates and Easter eggs, I guess. Um, so I guess that's a hell of a holiday. I mean, I guess the eggs are okay, but growing up as a kid, I guess all the chocolate candy was good when you're young, not so good when you're older.
Well, you bring up a very good thought there in terms of talking about the significance of Easter growing up, the reality of it. When you're young, you think about Easter egg hunting. You think about, of course, candy. The only thing I remember at a very young age, of course, is you have to get a new Easter suit
Yes.
for Easter, and it's just kind of interesting as you grow older and you mature and you look at the historical and the spiritual relevance of why Easter is celebrated and how in the heck it turned into an Easter egg hunt. New new brightly colored suits and candy.
I remember my very first Easter outfit that I can remember, where I actually had a hand in picking out my suit, and I picked out this leisure suit that had some straps around the side where you could tie it in the front like a bow. I don't
Oh
know
yeah,
I don't know
I
why I
remember that.
thought that was a good look. Uh, Looking back on it now, I was like, that has to be the most hideous thing I've ever selected. But back then, I thought I was styling. That and the fact that for some reason I had in my mind that I had to have shoes with the big heels on them. Not high heels like a woman, but like the
Mm.
whole shoe, the platform.
Big block heels.
Yes, had to be at least a half inch, if not thicker, man. I was going for the thickest one I could find. I'm not sure why that was in at the time, um, but evidently it was. I remember I used to like Starsky and Hutch, I think was the name of the
Oh
show.
yeah, yeah.
And
Starsky and Hutch. I remember
what
that.
was the brother on there? Um, Huggy Bear.
Oh yeah, Rooster.
Yeah, so he was always styling, man. He had the suits on, the shoes, the hat, and everything else, man. So I think I took my fashion tips from him back then, man.
Oh no, not Huggy Bear.
Yeah, I was
Boy,
trying
you
to get
let
the
your
look, man. I didn't have the hat though, but I did have like the suit and the shoes. Um, and I just thought that was the look, man. That was my very first memory of being able to go out and pick out an Easter suit on my own, not being dressed by my parents.
well, Jimmy. I guess one interesting thought when you say that, and when you consider, back in our early days when we were growing up, and the images of black men on the small screen that is the television, and what that represented, man, it affects an entire generation. Maybe not always in a good way.
Very, very true, man. Very, very true. So, Tom, lately I've been coming across some stuff, not on purpose. This is strictly
Okay.
by accident. And I don't know if it's God trying to send me a message or what, but I keep running across these articles about Africa.
Okay.
And like one of them was, when did Jesus become black? Another one was, why did the Europeans feel forced to cripple Africa's development? But it seemed like the central theme to several of these articles has been that the white Europeans, had a heavy hand in putting Africa in the condition where it is now, basically lagging behind most of the developed world. I mean, even if you look at Central and South America, we tend to think of those regions as being somewhat undeveloped. But when you
Mm-hmm.
measure development by how much light you're able to generate at night, and you look at the cities from the space platform as it circles the globe, you can see cities that are lit up, and you can, like America for the most part, all the east, west, southwest, all of the that part of the country is all lit up. I mean, you got to go to the interior before it gets a little spotty. Then when you go to Central and South America, I mean, it's like a city here and a city there. You get a few more in South America, but when you get into Europe and you get into the Asian countries, fairly lit up. Then you get to Africa. As big as that continent is, Tom, and there's like a city here, a city there, but for the most part, it's dark. So that means that just shows that there's been a lack of technology development in Africa. And even when it comes to power generation, you can measure a country's ability by how much power they use. These articles come out that says America is, I don't know, 3% of the world's population, but we use 35% of the world's energy. Um, I say if that's all we use is 35%, just imagine how much better our lives could be if we use 50%. But every country should be trying to produce as much energy as possible because you need energy to drive technology and to run your factories. And you cannot be a developed country, off candles. It doesn't work that way. So it just seems, man. I wanted to get your take on it, what you thought about it. You know, um, as Africa is held back, do you think those ties of what has happened to Africa also ties in to what has happened to black people here in America? And is this just a coincidence that you have European whites here who, some, not all, some who purposely held back and did whatever they could to hold blacks back, and then you have the same kind of effort by some, not all, um, some European countries that, for some reason have seemed to have an invested interest in holding Africa back.
Well, I believe that it is not coincidental. Anybody who's read enough understands that over several hundred years, I mean, I wouldn't say a millennia, but for several hundred years, I mean, when you consider that for tens of thousands of years, that Africa, and I'm talking Black Africa in particular, whether you talk about the old empires, Ghana, Mali, Songhay, and all of the great empires of Africa. When you consider the place that created civilization, that created language, all of the things that we take for granted today began in Africa. You had tens of thousands of years of science, technology, um, innovation that was created in Africa that a lot of the rest of the world was unaware of. And you consider where we are today, it is unfortunate. It's a travesty, but it's what I would consider to be in a lot of ways covert warfare. Against darker countries, whether they be in Africa, whether they be in South America. Because I mean, most people don't consider that when you look at, when you think of South America, you think of Latin, but there are a large number, of Black folks in South America. Matter of fact, there were more slaves that went to South America, of course, than they went to America. I mean, that came to
Yes.
North America, so to speak. So, with that being said, when you consider what's on the land mass on the continent of Africa, composed of 54 countries, when there is a reason that Europeans went to Africa. When you look at the mineral resources, when you talked about energy earlier, when you consider the oil deposits in Africa. I mean, we're just starting with Nigeria. Everybody knows there's a lot of oil in Nigeria.
In
Uh,
Libya.
Absolutely in Libya. And when you consider the true wealth in the land of Africa, it is completely tied. In my opinion, it is all connected. Malcolm said it a long time ago that the problem in Birmingham is no different than the problem in Accra, Ghana. So it's all connected, in my opinion. Black folks in countries all over the world are attacked. Whether that be in the African countries, whether that's in South America, whether that's in the United States of America. When you consider going into South America, I think South America has one of the largest black populations. Brazil, in particular, has one of the
Yes.
largest black populations behind the African countries. Nobody thinks of that when you consider all of the things in terms of our talent, our creativity, our ingenuity. That didn't happen by accident. When you consider how much suppression has been exacted globally against the African diaspora, and still considering what we've done in terms of innovation, in terms of creativity, just in the United States alone, Jimmy, just in the
Well, that
United
is
States
true,
alone.
Tom. But I think what you speak of really is happening on more of a global scale than we realize.
Correct.
For example, I just ran across some information, and like I said, I wasn't looking for this stuff. I mean, I was actually researching something else, and I just kind of run across it doing my searches. But a study that showed how they were saying there was a link between Africa and South America. And the reason that the scientists were interested in is mainly these archaeologists is because there were pottery there that were obviously from Africa, and the question was how does it get there? And then the more you looked into it, um, some of the African language had mixed in with some of the Indian languages that were in South America. Then even some of the food that's grown in South America traces back to Africa. So the question became, how in the world did these items get there? How do these words get into the language? How do these food sources, which are not native to South America, which are really native to Africa, how do they make it to um, the South American continent? And then, like I said, even some of the pottery, and then even beyond that, when you look at how the first pyramids were built in Africa, but yet you have pyramids that are built around the world,
Yes.
Central America, South America, and even into Mexico. I'm not sure if we have any in the Americas, but quite a few in Asia, and even a few in Europe. So without an internet, without an instruction manual, without anything that you could disseminate information on how to build a pyramid, someone who had the knowledge on how to build these pyramids, and those people were primarily in Africa at the time when the first pyramids were built, somehow that knowledge had to be exported to other people. Everybody didn't just start building pyramids around the same time,
Right.
and coincidentally all kind of stopped at the same time. So whoever knew how to build the pyramids, once they died off, that knowledge was went to the grave with them. There were no new pyramids built, and even today, we still struggle trying to figure out how in the world these pyramids were built during the time that they were. So it really suggests that the African people were not just land travelers. We know that they populated the world by leaving the continent of Africa and populating the world. but it also looks like there is circumstantial evidence to suggest that they were seafaring people, that they actually
Absolutely.
traveled the ocean long before the Europeans mastered ocean voyages. So we
Absolutely.
don't we this information is not really discussed very much and not really shared with us. And once again, how would the psyche of black folks be if they knew that you really don't come from a backwards continent like it's portrayed a lot of times, but your ancestors have really done some really great things that they do not get credit for.
Right.
And oh, go ahead.
No, no, you're right, Jimmy. You're correct. I mean, and you brought up a lot of things, but that's just scratching the surface. I mean, you talked about the Great Pyramids. I mean, this is 2021. They still don't know
Still don't know.
how to build. I mean, they don't know how to build the Great Pyramids. I mean, Jimmy, you look at the Washington Monument and the obelisk.
Yes.
People think that is an American or a European original.
No, there were plenty
No,
of them in
that came
Africa
from Africa.
before. Yes.
That came from Africa. People don't know that because they don't know their history. You talked about Africans being seafaring. If you've done your reading, I mean, if you've read Lerone Bennett, if you read Sheikh Anta Diop, if you read John H. Jackson, Africans sailed to what we call America and traded with the what we call
That's
the
what the
American
evidence
Indians.
suggests, man. So,
Absolutely,
and
it's
scientists are still
absolutely factual.
mystified how these things got there, not wanting to just admit the obvious that obviously these African people were trading, going
Absolutely.
back and forth, not just coming here and being stuck, but actually being able to go back to where they came from, which is, i.e., how trade happened. So, long before the Europeans were ocean of voyagers.
And then you also have to consider going back in history before what some consider to be the Great Awakening of Europe, what they call the Dark Ages,
Hmm.
for 800 years. And we both know that the Africans is Muslims, the Moors. Occupied, Europe for over 800 years, before they were finally expelled from that. But these were African people. They were Muslims, but they were African people, and
Yes.
so they brought science, they brought technology, they brought language when Europe was well into the Dark Ages.
Well, Tom, that just goes to show the true potential of folks, man, and we have to come out of this I don't know dream state that we're in, um, this sort of haze that covers us, and thinking that we have not contributed very much to humanity or society or to the greatness of any nation that we've occupied. I'm still amazed that the folks down in Mexico have a color problem. The folks in Brazil have a color. Like you said, there are a large population of black folks down in Brazil and in South America. And yet, after all this time, you would think that they'd be well beyond having color issues. But even in countries where large black populations, it still exists.
Yeah, you're right, Jimmy. I don't know that black folks have a color problem. Black folks have a
Well,
problem
it's the
with
non-black folks who have the color problem against the black folks. I mean, there are
right.
still a lot of that. I remember years ago, um, where there was whatever the I don't know. It's almost like our Miss America pageant, but for them, it's centered around dance, and but the winner of this contest almost becomes like Miss Brazil.
Mhm.
You're featured in the carnival and you're on tour. I mean, it's a big thing. And I remember when a black woman, dark skinned woman, won the contest.
Mhm.
And what a uproar it was. She wasn't able to keep her title. They actually stripped it from her after a couple of months because there was just so much noise being made, and had to replace her with a fair-skinned Brazilian woman. Um, and I was like, man, I didn't realize that color was such an issue down in Brazil. I've been there, and I guess I didn't notice it, but I didn't really live there. I'm just a visitor. So
You're right, Jimmy. And for what it's worth, it seems very curious that folks that have so much power globally have such a fragile ego that they can't handle when someone who is beautiful and black, whether it's a pageant, whether it's running one of the largest countries in the world, whatever it is,
Right.
folks seem to have a very fragile ego when they find out someone who doesn't look like them. um, Either one gets a smaller piece, gets a very small piece of the pie, or whatever it happens to be. I mean, it's like you have 95% of the power, but you all of a sudden get bent backwards for the 5% that you don't have.
Right. Well, and Tom, a lot of that, we need to wake up, man, come out of this, you know, sort of sleep that we've been in, man, and realize that we're capable of doing much more than where we are. And if we have voices that are diminishing our accomplishments, telling us what you can't do, downplaying any accomplishment your ancestors have made, this is why it becomes really important. Tom, we've talked about it on this show many times, that we have to educate and take responsibility of educating our own. You cannot leave it up to the schools. You cannot leave it up to teachers. You cannot leave it to society at large to do the very thing that you know that has to be done, because if you leave it up to others to educate your kids, you may not appreciate the product that they produce in the end.
Well, Jimmy, to your point, that is what happened after integration.
It is. It absolutely is. So I'm okay, Tom, and we've talked about this. If there is one thing that we should be heavily getting involved in, and that's them damn school boards. If you have the time, and if you have the time, I would say run for office, take control of the school boards, and set the bar high. Don't allow the school system to set the bar low to give your child a piece of paper that's worthless. Not in the global economy. In a global economy where you're competing against others, everybody needs to be have their A game and be ready to go out there and compete globally against your competition. If you can't do that, then you're going to get left behind.
That's true. Jimmy, you bring up a very good point because when most people think of running for political office, when they think of power, they think of typically a mayor or maybe a council person
Yes.
or maybe even a state senator. God forbid they're talking about you, this senator. But a lot of people they may not think about the board members so much as a position of power and influence in their community. So speak to that a little bit and give us a little bit more enlightenment on the importance of focusing on those politics too.
Yes, a lot of times what we don't realize, Tom, unless you really get involved with the politics of your city, you hear the expression that all politics is local. Well, there's a great deal of truth to that, and here's why. You have school boards that run your schools. That for the most part they select and approve the superintendent, the salary, the budgets, all approved by these boards. Generally, school boards are non-paying positions. They meet in the afternoon, so it becomes a little difficult for the average everyday person to get on those boards. But we have to find a way, Tom, to do that. In addition, not just the school boards we know about. Here are some boards you don't know about generally. You have economic development boards. Every city has them, just about, and they have special taxes that are either levied in an area, or sort of like an appraisal district, or a sales tax levied against the whole city. And the goal of these economic development boards is to use that money, millions of dollars, to entice businesses to come to your city or existing businesses to expand in your city. Now, I hear black folks, a lot of times when you go to these discussions, I hear people, a lot of our people, say that we don't have access to capital. But you know what? You know who you don't hear saying that? You don't hear non-black people complain about not having access to capital. And it's not that the banks are more willing to loan them money, because that's not true either. The banks don't really want to do business loans. 99% of them are turned down for a reason, because loaning money to a business is a bad investment. Banks know this. But you know who does give money to these businesses, Tom? Where they can go write their proposals, get millions of dollars? These economic development boards. And they go there, they apply, they get grants sometimes, which means the city just give them the money to expand. You don't even have to pay it back. Um, I know down in Dallas, close to where you live, Rudy's Chicken down there. I think they got $100,000 from the city of Dallas to expand their business, um, and I believe the Economic Development Board there gave them the money. And I believe it was a grant. I'm not even sure it was a loan. I think it was just a grant to expand. But you know what? They do a lot of business down there. They sell a lot of chicken. They collect a lot of
Mm.
sales tax for the city.
Oh, it's
So,
always Carl. There's always a line. There's always a line of Rudy's chicken giving.
so
Always a line.
giving them $100,000 to expand to move their business. They only moved it like 20 yards, but they moved it to like next door to them where the property had a much larger footprint, so they can have a drive-through and a parking lot. I don't think they still don't have a sit-down area, but
No, it's pick up and go, Jimmy.
yeah, it's
Cash
pick up and
carry.
go. That's true. And
So where do the economic development boards get their money?
they get it from the sales
Taxes.
tax.
Okay.
So a lot of times they've carved out a quarter of a cent sales tax against the city, or in some cases, you look at the appraisal districts, they've carved out an area. Like there's a downtown Dallas appraisal district where the business in that area, they tax you on your inventory or your equipment, or which is why a lot of companies will lease their equipment rather than carry inventory on their books for having office equipment. I remember my very first business. I had a downtown office, and I went out and bought a bunch of furniture and equipment and computers, blah blah. And I remember getting my CPA had to certify, just how much stuff we owned, and had to put a dollar value on it. And I just thought it was for some kind of tracking purposes, which it was. But then the next thing I know, I got a bill. I got a bill every year from the appraisal district there saying you got so much assets in your office and it's worth this amount of money, and please send us a check for this amount based on what you have. So these boards and districts collect this money, and they're supposed to use it for, like I said, to fix streets, to put on activities to help promote the area or promote the city, to help entice businesses to come, to help expand businesses that are already there. So we need to understand, Tom, there are millions of dollars in your city already. And sometimes, like the city that I live in, last year, I went to one of the meetings for the Economic Development Board. They basically had a budget of about $20 million that they had collected. Um,
Mm,
they were only able to give away 18 million of it, so that meant 2
mm,
million had to be carried over to the next year. And I'm thinking to myself, how in the world, for an organization that gives money away, that you can't
right.
give away $20 million? That
And now
you
is this tied to a city or a county or
Well, in
what?
this case, it was tied to the city that I live in. But every
Okay.
city has these boards. They have this functionality. So what I'm saying is that because we don't get involved in a lot of times in local politics, and we wonder why people who go down there and run for city council, run for mayor, how they come out multimillionaires from being down in City Hall for a job that pays $10 a session, how they come out rich because they understand how the process is work. They know where the money is to go apply for it and get it for their business activities. So we need to learn how to play the game much better. And like Bonnie and Clyde say, would say the reason they rob banks is because that's where the money
What
was.
what is
So we need to
absolutely.
learn where the money is, and the money is not in the loans. When we go to banks and we apply for business loans, we get turned down. We eventually go to the SBA to get something from the government to guarantee. Go back to the banks for the banks don't loan the business because it's always a bad investment. But you know who does invest in businesses? Those economic development boards. You're much better learning how to play that game and applying for those, especially if you can get a grant where you don't have to pay the money back.
So how do you learn more about these economic development boards? Where do you go? How do you find out more information about
One,
them?
I
And
would
how to
say
learn to play that game?
go to your whatever your city's website is and start clicking around. They don't advertise these things, but when you start looking at mayors, for instance, if you have anybody who has a connection to the mayor, start asking people who understand the local politics about where the boards are. I mean,
Hmm.
there's boards that govern everything in the city, but find the ones that handle the money and that issue the money out, and learn that process and learn how to apply to for a grant for your business, to either start a business or to expand the business. Going to the banks is almost a fool's errand these days.
Gotcha. Well, Jimmy, that is great insight, and I know we have maybe a couple more minutes left on the show. So,
Yes.
how do we want to round this thing out before we call it a wrap for this week and for March?
Well, let's do this, Tom. Let's. We talked about women all month long for the most part. You know,
Hmm.
we want to encourage people to go out, stop being a victim, stop believing. If you believe that you're incapable, that this is a white person's world, it is not. I mean, this world was populated by black people. Black people had a huge contribution to world history and the accomplishments of the world. Any place in the world that you step foot is a place that you should feel comfortable calling home because your ancestors had a hand in developing every nation on this planet. I don't care where you go. Even the Antarctica, I believe at one point probably had some black people there. So empower yourself. Do not feel helpless. Do not be a victim. But on top of that, and I'm going to leave you with this last bit of advice. One of the best ways, one of the best indicators when you look at economists, when some of the things they say about the success of various groups around the world, the most successful groups that leave their countries or their home origin to go become expats in other countries, the best measure of their success is wealth they generate, not from working for someone else, but from owning their own businesses and generating wealth of the population by providing goods and services to those people. And I understand that Asians, Indians, and some Europeans are considered the best at that, but there is no reason for us to be poor in the world that we help populate and contribute to. There may not even been a world if the few handful of people were there in East Africa, had gotten sick, caught the flu, and all died before being able to grow a population and then populate the world. So any place we go in the world, Tom, is our home, and we should not be made to be victims
True.
any place in this world. And
That
so
is
we
true.
have to understand that we have a rightful place here. We've been the leaders of this world until others have convinced us to be pushed aside and that we have nothing to contribute, nor can we contribute, and that's all a lie. We have to stop believing a lie, Tom.
I would agree. And the key thing is nobody's going to give you anything. You got to
Nobody.
take it,
Yeah.
and you got to protect and defend what you do have.
So get in control of our education, and then we talked about this before. Controlling the economic base of your community has to be top priority, and we cannot
Right.
leave it up to others to teach us how to do this. We have to get out and do this ourselves. So the sooner we start making steps in that direction, taking over those school boards, and then learn how those other economic boards work, because you know what, Tom, this is not white folks' money that they're giving away. This is money that they collect from everybody.
Yeah.
When you start talking about sales tax, who doesn't spend money in a city?
True.
Everyone
Very true.
does. But
Right.
when it comes to handing the checks out, I guarantee you, when you look at companies that have gotten money from your city, either tax abatements, grants, relocation money, training money. I mean, they get millions of dollars sometimes, especially in today's world. I mean,
Right.
what would Amazon get to come to your city? What would the city offer them? And that money, you know where that money comes from? Those economic boards. That's how
Right.
they scrape the money together to give to the big companies to come there. But there's no reason why you shouldn't be applying for that money also.
Right. Yeah. You're exactly right. And information is power.
Information is
So
power. So,
absolutely.
Tom, we are over, man, by a couple of
Yeah.
minutes, but
Okay.
but
Good
that's
discussion.
fine
Very good
compared to where
discussion.
we've been. So, why don't you go ahead and close it out with a prayer, and don't forget the ancestors.
Absolutely. Dear gracious Father, we come before you, thanking you for allowing us to come here today again, Father, to do your will on earth. We ask that you would keep us focused on the things that you would have us to do, Father. We ask that you would continue to empower us to honor those who came before us, those who have cut the path that we stand on and whose shoulders we stand. We ask you would continue to keep us focused and that you would allow us to somehow do your will on earth in a way that is a blessing, Father, and an honor to you. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
Let the choir say amen. Congregation
All
say
right.
amen.
No plate being passed today, Jimmy. No plate being passed
No
today.
plate?